Imagine walking into a bank and being told you're too risky to trust, not because of your credit score, not because of your debt, but because of the year you were born. Now imagine your father walks into the same bank, same branch, same week, and they hand him a premium credit card, a personal banker, and a bottle of water. Same institution, same building, same logo on the door. Two completely different realities. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Banks don't just look at your finances. They look at you, your age, your generation, your habits, your psychology, and they have built entirely separate systems, products, strategies, and traps designed specifically for each one of you. And the terrifying part? Most people never notice it's happening. By the end of this video, you will. But before we get there, there's one question hiding underneath all of this. One thing banks know about generational behavior that they will never tell you publicly. Something that explains why Gen Z is being handed digital apps and dopamine loops instead of savings accounts. We'll get to that. But first, let's go back to where this all started. Chapter 1. The Golden Generation, Boomers, Baby Boomers, born between 1946 and 1964. The generation that rebuilt the post-war world, bought houses with one salary, and walked into banks like they owned the place. Because for a long time, they basically did. Here's something most people don't know. The modern retail banking system as we experience it today, the branch, the relationship manager, the fixed mortgage, the savings account with a handshake, was built for boomers. Not designed with them in mind, built for them, around them, because of them. After World War II, Western economies needed to move money into the hands of a massive, working, spending population. Banks became the trusted intermediary, and boomers were the first generation to walk through those doors as the primary customer. The result? A deeply personal banking relationship. Think about what that looked like. You had one bank. You knew the manager's name. He knew yours. When you needed a loan, you sat across a desk, looked someone in the eye, explained your situation, and they made a decision. Partly on your numbers, partly on your reputation in the community. This wasn't just culture, it was strategy. Banks understood that boomers valued loyalty, stability, and face-to-face trust. So they built branches on every high street. They trained staff to be warm and authoritative. They designed products, mortgages, life insurance packages, bundled savings plans that matched a boomer's life trajectory perfectly. You got a job. You opened an account. You got a mortgage. You got a pension. The bank was there for every step. But here's where it gets interesting, because that loyalty had a cost, and it wasn't paid by the boomers. Banks learned something from servicing this generation. If you make someone feel valued early, they will stay forever. Boomers, on average, stay with the same bank for over 17 years. Some, their entire adult lives. That's not just customer retention. That's captivity with a smile. And when banks realized that, they started asking a different question about the next generation entirely. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Generation, Gen X. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. The generation that gets skipped in almost every conversation about generational banking, and that tells you everything. Because banks didn't ignore Gen X. They experimented on them. Gen X came of age during a period of massive financial turbulence, the stagflation of the late 70s, the crash of '87, the savings and loan crisis in the U.S. that wiped out hundreds of financial institutions. These weren't abstract events for Gen X. They were the backdrop of their 20s. And banks noticed something uncomfortable. Gen X was skeptical. Unlike their boomer parents, Gen Xers didn't automatically trust the institution. They'd watched the institution fail. They'd seen the branch manager give bad advice. They were the first generation to genuinely question whether the bank was on their side. So what did banks do? They gave Gen X choice, or at least the illusion of it. The late 80s and 90s saw an explosion of financial products aimed at Gen X, credit cards with introductory 0% offers, investment accounts, mutual funds, insurance products bundled with mortgages in ways that were almost impossible to untangle without a law degree. Banks dressed complexity up as sophistication. They said, "You're smart, you're independent, here are options." What they didn't say, most of these options benefit us far more than you. Gen X became the testing ground for financial product proliferation, the generation that went from one bank product to 12, often without fully understanding the fees, the penalties, the hidden clauses compounding quietly in the background. And then the internet arrived, and everything changed, because suddenly, for the first time, a generation could look things up. Gen X started doing their own research, comparing rates, reading the small print, and banks, for the first time, felt a flicker of something unfamiliar: accountability. They needed a new playbook, and they were about to get one, delivered to them by a generation they genuinely did not understand. Chapter 3: The Digital Disruptors. Millennials. Millennials, born between 1981 and 1996, the generation that traditional banks feared, misunderstood, underestimated, and ultimately had to rebuild themselves to survive. Let's be blunt about something the banking industry spent years trying to deny. They got millennials completely wrong. The early narrative, pushed hard by legacy banks and financial media, was that millennials were financially irresponsible. They spent money on avocado toast instead of mortgages. They were bad with money. The implication being that's why they weren't buying the products banks were selling. That was a lie. And eventually, the data proved it. Millennials weren't avoiding mortgages because they were reckless. They were avoiding them because they graduated into the 2008 financial crisis, the single greatest act of institutional financial negligence in modern history, caused by the very banks now lecturing them about fiscal responsibility. Let that land for a second. The generation that was told to trust the bank, save with the bank, borrow from the bank, watch the bank detonate the global economy, and then get bailed out with public money. And somehow, the marketing response from the industry was, "Have you tried our new loyalty rewards card?" Millennials didn't just disengage from banks, they created alternatives. This is the generation that launched the fintech revolution. Venmo, PayPal, Robinhood, Monzo, Revolut, Starling. These weren't just apps. They were responses to betrayal, direct answers to the question, what would a bank look like if it actually put the customer first? And legacy banks panicked. They started buying fintech companies, launching their own digital products, dropping fees, improving apps, opening innovation labs staffed with people in hoodies who'd never been inside a traditional branch. But here's the part nobody tells you. Even as banks scrambled to appear millennial-friendly, they were quietly doing something else underneath the surface, studying them. Because millennials, more than any previous generation, were leaving data trails. Every tap, every transaction, every search, recorded, analyzed, used to build behavioral profiles more detailed than anything a bank manager's handshake could ever capture. Banks weren't losing millennials. They were learning from them. And they were going to use everything they learned on the next group coming through the door, a group that had never known a world without a screen. Chapter 4: The Experiment, Gen Z. Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012. The first generation of true digital natives, and the cohort that banks have been quietly preparing for with alarming precision for over a decade. Here's what's happening right now, And most people haven't connected the dots yet. Banks and the fintech companies that have replaced them for younger users are not building products for Gen Z. They are building environments, ecosystems designed around Gen Z's psychology, built on a deep data-driven understanding of exactly how this generation thinks, feels, and makes financial decisions. Consider what banks know about Gen Z that they didn't know about previous generations. They know that Gen Z has an average attention span on a single piece of content of around 8 seconds before they scroll. They know Gen Z discovers financial products primarily through social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. They know Gen Z is more anxious about money than any previous generation at the same age, but more interested in investing, crypto, stocks, fractional shares than any previous young cohort. And they know one more thing. Gen Z hates feeling sold to, but responds powerfully to anything that feels like community, education, or authentic storytelling. So look at what the banking world has built in response. Apps with no branches required, instant account opening with a selfie, round-up saving features that hide the discipline inside a satisfying animation, cashback schemes, spending breakdowns with emojis, notification sounds designed by actual sound engineers to feel rewarding rather than alarming, micro-investing platforms that let you buy a fraction of a share for $1, designed to create an emotional relationship with the market so that over time, as your income grows, you graduate to larger and larger products. This isn't convenience. This is architecture. And it goes deeper because Gen Z is also the most debt-averse young generation in recorded financial history, and banks know it. So instead of leading with credit, they're leading with empowerment. Build your score. Watch your money grow. You're in control. The product comes later. The hook is set first. Buy now. Pay later schemes, which are not technically issued by banks, but are increasingly funded by them, are the fastest growing financial product among Gen Z globally. A generation that says they hate debt is accruing it in smaller, invisible, interest-adjacent slices that don't feel like debt at all. It is, without question, the most sophisticated generational targeting in banking history. And it brings us back to the question I asked at the very beginning. Chapter 5. The answer. I told you at the start there was something banks know, something they have never said publicly, that explains the entire pattern we've just traced across 4 generations. Here it is. Every strategy I've described, the relationship banking of the boomer era, the product proliferation aimed at Gen X, the digital pivot chasing millennials, the behavioral architecture designed for Gen Z, every single one of them is built on the same core insight. People form their foundational financial habits between the ages of 18 and 30. That's it. That's the secret. Banks don't target generations because they care about generational culture. They target generations because they know that whatever product, experience, or emotional relationship you build with someone during those years becomes the default for the rest of their life.